Hey everybody, my name's Kyle, and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Ryan Adams is full of surprises. The fact that he would release a full covers album practically out of nowhere is certainly unexpected. But the fact that that album would be a full remake of Bruce Springsteen's 1982 classic Nebraska should be no surprise at all. Adams' songwriting and especially his solo acoustic performances have long felt like they were paying a spiritual debt to that intimate and sparsely recorded song cycle. To that end, perhaps it was just a matter of time before Adams would break down and simply record his own versions of the songs that made such a strong impact on him as an artist. Nebraska, of course, has long been one of Bruce Springsteen's most revered albums, originally recorded on 4-track tape as demos to later be worked on with the E Street Band. The album was ultimately released as is, as a strictly solo affair, while he and the band went on to record Born in the USA. Nebraska has long been an album I respected more than I enjoyed. No doubt it's a lo-fi masterpiece, but it's not a record I find myself returning to very often. With that in mind, I had my reservations about Ryan Adams taking on this music. Not because it was in some way sacred and untouchable, but because I had a feeling I already knew exactly what it would sound like. To be fair, Adams does have a flair for reinvention when he does covers, and Nebraska isn't even his first full album cover. He famously released a full album cover of Taylor Swift's 1989, less than a year after Swift's album came out. That ambitious project featured a number of bold reinterpretations, almost out of aesthetic necessity. But with Springsteen's Nebraska, we already know Adams is taking a detour into terrain that would likely sound familiar even to fans that had never themselves visited the source. And for the most part, Adams does play it pretty straight. But if you're expecting Adams' version to follow Springsteen's demo format of little more than acoustic guitar and vocals, well, as I said earlier, prepare to be surprised. I think it's fair to say that Ryan Adams' Nebraska is much better produced than the original. That inherently creates a bit of a different vibe from Springsteen's more coffeehouse-style experience. So how much you enjoy Adams' take may certainly be influenced by how reverent you feel about the original recordings. Speaking of reverence, I actually appreciate the way Adams has refrained from treating these songs as sacred objects. As I talked about, coincidentally, in my recent review of Springsteen's own new covers album, I generally prefer to see artists take risks with covers rather than simply recreating the originals. With Nebraska, Adams rarely takes departures that feel like risks. But what they do feel like is an evolution. Springsteen never originally intended for his Nebraska recordings to be released in the rough form in which they were recorded, but I could imagine them sounding more like what Adams has done had he in fact spent more time with them. Some of Adams' switch-ups work very well. In fact, Open All Night ends up feeling like the most patently Ryan Adams song on the album, due in part to the change from electric guitar in the original version to acoustic here. It's an even bolder choice considering the fact that it was the only electric song on the original album. Then on Reason to Believe, Adams swaps the guitar for piano for a sparse, spiritual, almost hymn-like take on the album's closing track. Other moments of change deliver more mixed results. Adams' rockabilly take on Johnny 99 is mostly a winner, but like so many of his songs over the past few years, it ends up far too saturated in reverb. Atlantic City is arguably the original album's best-known song, and the new version here does a respectable job elevating it to a place that feels a bit like the haunting I'm on Fire. But when the percussion kicks in near the end with a rhythm that feels far too similar to the famous Funky Drummer sample, it's a misstep that takes me out of the moment. Then on State Trooper, we get a cacophony of distortion and echo that I actually think serves the storytelling of the song well. But at over 5.5 minutes, it feels like it wears out its welcome long before it actually ends. We've all lived with Springsteen's original Nebraska album for decades, so it's obviously still too soon to say how Adams' version will hold up. My gut tells me it will likely become more of a footnote than an essential entry in his discography, not unlike 1989 before it. That being said, I'm enjoying these new versions of these classic songs in ways I didn't expect. Springsteen's Nebraska is a classic, but for the immediate future, I feel I'll be more compelled to return to Adams' version, if only for that fresh perspective. And if you listen to Springsteen's own spiritual successors to Nebraska, the albums The Ghost of Tom Joad and Devils and Dust, I can see how Adams' evolution of this music might reflect what a multiverse version of Bruce himself might have done. As far as my rating is concerned, let me be clear that I'm not passing judgment on the songs themselves. Related to that, it would also be unfair to project any degree of credit upon Adams for those songs either. So I'm giving Ryan Adams' interpretation of the album Nebraska an X rating of 6 out of 10. It's a respectful tribute to that American classic that also acts as a compelling what if. One final note here on Ryan Adams. As I record this video, it's December 2022, and Nebraska is now the 5th studio album Adams has released in this calendar year. That's a crazy accomplishment any way you look at it. But Adams himself actually teased he'd have 5 releases in 2022 earlier in the year. We've already seen double album Chris in March, followed by another double album, Romeo and Juliet, in April, and then FM during the summer. Adams claimed we'd also see a studio album called 1985, as well as a deluxe live album from his Carnegie Hall performance, both before the year was over. Neither of those have materialized yet, but we did get the excellent Devolver in September, and now Nebraska, both of which were previously unannounced albums offered as free downloads. With only 3 weeks remaining in 2022, could we actually still see more music from Ryan Adams? I wouldn't be surprised. Once again, my name is Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.